Okay, well, so far we have done a review of the second lecture. Basically just going through really quickly what is basic academic research, and we talked about research gaps and variables and the like. So I guess if you missed the introduction, you have to go back by yourself. So I'm just going to continue. I was thinking, where am I? I don't know, lost where I am. Okay, I've lost. This is it. Right, so I'm not going to go into literature review right now because we have a limited time. What we're going to do is I'm going to get into research design. Because even though there actually are questions on each part, because we've spent a lot of time on basic, how to do literature review. Okay, so we spent quite a bit of time on this as well. So we spent quite a bit of time on figuring out how you should focus a project, that a problem statement should identify variables. We just mentioned that the variable, you should know what is the independent one and what is the dependent. The independent variable is the one that you believe has an impact on the dependent variable. And then the research question is the one that is the focus of your entire research project. So you need to know the variables and the participants.
We're not seeing our screen.
You're not seeing my screen? Oh, I thought I had shared a screen. Okay, let me go back and share a screen. Oh, sorry about that. Thanks for telling me. You're right. So when you guys are, no, I didn't say anything. Anyway, let me just go back to where I am. Why is this? Okay. See that you're seeing nothing except a blank screen. Okay, let's try to find what the screen I had up before. Okay. Yeah, I didn't really say anything that on this slide that was worth. Right, so I was saying you all should know that when you're looking, oops, people are coming in as I'm talking. So you all know by now that we have been focusing on single empirical studies in this class, preparing you how to do that. But we've also told you that when you're doing literature review, as in when you're doing the background for your project, when you're preparing your literature review, you should be reading systematic reviews and meta-analytical studies, if they exist, so that you can become knowledgeable about the field, so you're up to date, right? Hopefully, is there anybody who doesn't know what a systematic review is at this point? Is there somebody who wants to remind us? While I'm moving on to the next slide. Nobody wants to remind us? So a meta-analytical study is one that combines the data from many empirical studies revolving around several keywords within a particular date frame. Usually, it could be over all time, but sometimes over a particular date frame. And a systematic review is a qualitative assessment of the literature on a particular topic. So in a systematic way. So you use keywords to do searches to find a comprehensive review of a topic, basically. So that is why these two types of papers are really good to read to understand what's happening in the field. And aside from that, it's also really good to read important studies. They have three terms for them: landmark, pivotal, or seminal studies that have a big impact on the field or subfield that you're looking at. It's also really important to look at recent studies. So that's basically what you need to look at when you're reading papers. And then we went through and studied all of this. I'm not going to spend time right now on that. So in the next little part of the review, we're going to spend time on as much of the methods as possible. But I said, I think that's what people need to understand the most. That tend to be the biggest challenge in terms of preparing for the test based on previous experience. So you need to know what is research design, how to select this, know the difference between the population and the sample and the setting, and this deciding the type of data collection instruments. This is the three most, this is not actually the only thing, because there are other parts of methods. Even the ethics and the rest is also part of methods. The timeline, the budget. But if you don't have these three right, you're not going to have a good project. All right, so we need to understand what all of these three mean. So in terms of research design, there are many types, and we focus, let's say we focus on these three: descriptive, experimental, and correlation. Not even so concerned about causal comparative research. All right, why are we coming in with non-full names today? So in terms of descriptive research, we had already said, so surveys are the most common type of descriptive research, which includes both, face-to-face and online, and you have census and samples. So census is when you collect from the entire population, and samples when you collect from a subset of that population. Remember, the population in research doesn't mean the population of the country, it means the population of the participants. And you can have many types of participants. So I like to use university community as an example. You can have, if you take UTech as an example, we have, if you put it really simply, we have staff and students. So that's two types of participants. And then among staff, do you all know how many types of staff UTech officially classifies? Anybody can hazard a guess? In fact, let me help you out. There's 4 types. So can anybody tell me what are any of the, see if we can get 3 out of the 4 types. But to get all 4, you'll be amazing. But you all know one: academic staff. Try the others. Anybody there?
Administrator.
Yeah, man.
The auxiliary staff.
Oh, yeah, doing good. And another one is technical. So those are the 4. Come on, people doing good. Wow, better than I thought. Yeah, so the whole point is you would have to decide. You could do a project and you decide you don't want auxiliary staff. You could want, technical and academic and students. You have to decide what, and then you have to decide how you're going to sample them. Because, for example, I've done projects at UTech. I was sampling auxiliary staff, and if you decide you want to do online survey of auxiliary staff, that's not going to work at all, ever. They don't have computers, they have limited, generally speaking, they have less education, they're less interested in research, they're a different subgroup than everybody else. So you need to say that, you getting me? So if you're doing a sample survey, you actually need to know the size of each population. Get me? So we have here auxiliary staff as a population, and the administrative staff is a different population with a different size. Yes, and the students is a different population, depending on what the project is about. We haven't said what the project, and then for each of them, we have to decide how we're going to collect that data. There's a problem with self-reports in surveys. Surveys tend to be cross-sectional, which basically means you're collecting data from that particular person that is part of the sample only one time. That snapshot could take place over anywhere from a day to even as long as a year, but the idea is you're trying to take it as quickly as possible about a sample. You're trying to take a snapshot at a point in time. Just sometimes because of feasibility, it may take weeks or months to finish. Very short. So there are a whole bunch of challenges to do a cross-sectional study, but there are also longitudinal studies. Generally speaking, longitudinal studies are considered to be better than cross-sectional. Why? Because you're taking things 2 or more times. So if you want to measure something about somebody, if you take it 2 or more times, you can see if there's a change. But before you decide if there's any change happening, you can decide, who are you taking that longitudinal survey of? Are you taking it of samples samples from the population at different periods. So the trend is like the same people and you take them again and again over time. No, I'm saying it wrong. So the trend could be you're looking at first year skit students and then you're looking at first year skit students over time. And a cohort could be you're looking at skit students who just graduated from BSc computing and you just follow them over a long period of time until they die. That's a cohort. So there are different kinds of longitudinal survey. You have to figure out which one is the most appropriate. And these are the steps. So generally speaking, longitudinal better than cross-sectional. A little bit about it. Experimental now is considered the gold standard for research. All things considered. However, there's a caveat. Some experimental research can be problematic because there are caveats which I won't get into here, where experimental research can have some ethical dilemmas. Yeah, you can, usually that's not known in computing, but it is possible. But in experimental research, you as a researcher or research team are manipulating one condition to see what's the impact on another. It could be more than those 2 variables, so it could be 10 variables. But usually you're trying to see the impact on one dependent. You're trying to see the impact on one dependent variable. And the challenge is that there are a whole bunch of other variables that can have an effect and you're trying to control for them. If you don't control for those variables, you can come to a conclusion that one thing impacts the other when it's really the other things that have the impact. So if I take all the brightest, richest, excited people about research in one of my classes and give them a new method to teach research and say, oh, but they all got A's, it's because they were excited, rich, and motivated, not because the teaching method was wonderful. As an example, everybody who's awake following me? Are you there?
Yes, Miss Mary.
Well, because if it's just Ralph want to talk to me. That was Ralph, right?
Yes, it was.
I'm probably, anyway, at least I have Ralph. Not sure who else is here with me. But anyway, guys, if you have a question or a comment or a concern, please speak up. Anyway, so there's a whole long list of characters of experimental research. And one of the very key ones is that the idea is equivalent groups. And the problem with equivalent groups is that they're supposed to be identical where possible. And the problem is that it's not always identical. And when it's not identical, we actually call that experiment a quasi-experimental research group. So let's use the classroom. If you took, I don't know, took programming 1 and you had 10 programming 1 classes, how do the programming 1 classes get assigned? As in the students. It's not randomly, let's put it that way. It's based on what is convenient to each student who pays. So maybe the students who, whatever the reason is, it's not randomly assigned. For it to be a complete natural experiment, it needs to be completely equivalent. When it's not equivalent, it's non-randomly assigned. So for experimental study to be really good, it needs to have all of these things. If it doesn't have random assignment to the groups, it's not a true experiment. Let's see. And so we have to think about these wonderful things, validity and reliability. Wait, where's reliability? Not here. At any rate, if we do a study and it's not valid, it has no value whatsoever. Right? And then there are 2 types of validity, internal and external validity. Internal is based on, can you basically make some, okay, remember we talked just earlier about the sample and we talked about the population. If you can reliably say that within the sample, the results are true, whatever you get the results are. If you say that there's no impact between X and Y, and if it's true within the sample, that's internally valid. If it's generalized to the whole population, that's called external validity. And the end of it, not to get into the whole deal right now, it's actually not possible to have perfect external validity, but the goal is to maximize it where possible. That's really the goal of the projects. I had just mentioned this. There are different types of experimental design. So if you have no control, can somebody other than Ralph remind us what I mean by no control? Remember I just said in a true experiment, you have a experimental group and a control group. How can we have no control?
Is it a case where it happens naturally?
Yeah, man, but no, we're not talking about that. We're not talking about the natural experiment I just mentioned earlier. Let's go to any experiment, including one that you are anyone that you hear about in this class or you're proposing for your project. Somebody give me a true experiment first. Somebody give me an example of a true experiment. One that is that meets this criteria.
A case where you're trying to identify whether or not there is efficiency, effectiveness in a learning method. So you probably have one group that learns a normal way and another group that's learning according to the method that you have planned out. So that's a control group learning.
Okay. All right. So yeah, that could be one. So if that is fine, we just would need to make sure that both groups are similar. So in terms of like the age, in terms of like maybe their previous exposure to technology, in terms of their previous knowledge of the course content, all kind of things to control. So by the way, I'm just giving the context of what we mean by the subject is similar. So you have to first figure out how the people are similar. So you have to find out about them enough. And then everybody, what I'm saying by they have to be similar, because they're not similar, you do that experiment and it's not valid. Because if what you're doing is trying to see if somebody is able to do web design and they came into the class knowing web design, if you don't make sure that you put in people who have equal levels of web design skills among the two, let's just simple, one experiential group, one core group, you won't see what happens during the class. So you actually have to look at controlling for all of those things and making sure that the groups are similar. So once we have random assignment based on treatment groups, right, it would actually have internal validity, meaning what you have at the end, the result is actually based on what happened within the experiment. So let's take that exact example. What would that example mean that there's no control? Anybody, including, I don't know who that was. I don't know if it was.
Would this be the case if you use the, what's it called? The convenient sampling technique?
No, this is not about sampling technique at all. We're going to get there soon, but we haven't gone there. We're still in just design. So we're going there next. No, this is only about what they put in a control group. So like you can actually just do a project where we just say, oh, I want to see if you're saying that we have this new fancy, so say what is hot now, gamification technique. So we have a gamification technique for teaching, I don't know what. Let's go back to the teaching programming. There's a lot of research on that. I just decided to take all of second year students who are doing OOP and give them, and give everybody the chance to be exposed to a gamification method for learning OOP. That's an experiment, but there's no control. So since there's no control, we don't know, we'll have nothing to compare. So it's actually pre-experimental. That's what the term is. I'm just trying to clarify what it means. So quasi-experiment now is where you're not having random assignment. So as I said, that's why the classroom is a perfect example. Another one could be departments in a company, whatever. It's something that exists easily and you don't change it. There's no random assignment. And so you're going to have a big problem with even saying that there's what is called internal validity. Both pre-experimental, quasi-experimental, you're going to have some challenges with saying that the results really means that you can generalize. Anyway, I'm going to move on from there. Correlation studies is fairly simple. You're just looking at 2 or more variables to see if there is a link between the 2 of them based on correlations. And since you all have done assignments with that, you basically find out after doing the study if relationships are strong or weak. The difference between a correlational study and an experimental study is what? Anybody knows? As in terms of validity. Let me say it a different way. Why would a correlational study have less validity than an experimental study? Don't all speak at once. Is this a hard question?
Yes.
Is it that for the experimental study, you are actually doing some experiment where you manipulate the data to see what affects which variable affects the other, while the correlation, you're just looking to see if there is a relationship exists between them?
Yeah, but you haven't explained why. You're actually right, but you haven't said why the correlation is more of a problem. You've actually said it, but you haven't said it. You've only implied it. Can anybody add to what you just said? It's actually all about the manipulation. Why does the manipulation in the experiment make it better?
Miss, is it because with experimental, there's kind of like no real limit between how you can experiment with the variables, but with correlation, there's a set method for doing it, so it's not
it's no set method, no. In a sense, if you go back to this kind of funny, you see this pre-experiment, I don't know why they even call it this. I just come along and see these terms. Really, trust me. This pre-experiment, in a sense, could be a correlation study. Because basically, if you take anything, if you just take any data in the world and do a correlation of 2 variables, that's a correlational study. You can't tell if that link is cause is due to any kind of cause. It could be by chance. So since correlation only says that there's a link, it doesn't say the direction, it doesn't say why, it doesn't tell you whether it's by chance. You don't know much when you do a correlational study. So it has some value because you actually find out if there are relationships, but we don't know the reasons for those relationships and we don't know if they're by chance at all. Whereas in an experiment, because it's longitudinal, maybe you don't get this. In a correlational study, it's cross-sectional. So a correlational study is a cross-section. You just do a correlation of stuff you get in a cross-sectional study to see if there's a relationship. We don't know ever if it's causation. And that's the thing you should always remember. This is not about getting a grade in this class. I'm so distressed, only 30 people are here. I guess they're going to go through this and hopefully they'll learn more. Or maybe they'll watch the video afterwards. I see people start coming to the class more and more as time passes. It's not about me, I actually hope that people learn something from going to the research class. Yeah. So the purpose is to figure out if there's relationships. But the thing is, any relationship, it's difficult to tell if those relationships are real unless you do it by collecting data over time. So it's valuable, but if you want to get to be more sure whether they're real relationships, you do a longitudinal study. Because all those links could be by chance. Does that make sense? And by the way, if you look it up, I think we looked up in one of the classes, you can actually find correlations that even have high, like over 95% statistical significance, when to all of us, it all seems very unlikely to be due to cause, it's just by chance. So anyway, long and the short is there are statistics that you can use to figure out if when you take data, if there are correlation, and you say there seems to be a relationship between those variables. That's it. And then you can also take data where you have data that is either already secondary data or data you collect going forward, which is called prospective data, in order to see if there's cause and effect from that data. It's not an experimental study, it's a longitudinal study where you try to look for causal relationships that use statistics. But because it's not an experiment, the relationships are tentative, right? Because you're not actually manipulating the data, long and the short. So you can do it going back with data that's been stored or going forward. And here are some examples. I'm gonna have time for that right now. So let's move on to the next. Taking long, because I definitely have to go through at least 3 of these. So let's now go to, I need to go to, where is it? Not that. Definitely need to go to something. We need to definitely go through the methods part. I mean, I'm not going to go through everything that's on the test now. I'm just going to go through the parts that are like tend to be the hardest to understand, or people like didn't come to the class, whatever, tend to need a review. So just anybody who comes on afterwards, I'm not saying that what I'm doing is everything for the test. I'm just going through what is likely to be most difficult for you to understand by just looking at the slideshow. But another thing, everybody, the slideshow is not the class. You're supposed to either buy or borrow or something, a text, and you're supposed to be reading it, just to let you all know that the slideshow is not the class. Please don't tell me there was one question that wasn't on any slideshow. Slideshow is some subset of the syllabus. Anyway, back to the story. So as I said earlier,
Excuse me, Ms. Mayor.
Yes.
I have a question. Sorry to interrupt.
No problem.
But on sampling, I actually wrote down this question because I was thinking about it. I know that for different types of research, different types of sampling, it's best to use a certain type, right, Miss?
Right.
But really and truly, isn't it up to the researcher alone to choose what sampling is best to use? Because I know that certain types are best for certain designs, but what if the
Yes or no?
researcher is comfortable?
Yes or no? Here's a better, let me tell you a different way. There are terms that we have not spent almost any time on. So there's terms called epistemology, ontology, and what's the other one? There's another one. There are three ologies, but let's go back to what the ologies are related to. So epistemology, ontology, and there's another one which I can't remember right now. That all relates to your research design. So I would say that the researcher or the research team gets to pick their research design. You have more limited choice on the sampling technique. So let me tell you why I would say you have much more choice on research design. I don't have a PhD, but I spend a lot of time for fun listening to people who are doing PhDs and listening to a lot of videos. Here's what they all say, bottom line. The research design is dependent on the philosophy of the researcher. Now, at the end of it, when you submit to a journal or you defend your PhD or a master's or a bachelor's, if you can't defend why that suits your research question, people will literally either give you a poor grade or fail you or not accept you to a journal. However, if you can have a good justification, you could possibly do the same exact project using different research designs, using different methodology. So let me explain. So if you want to find out, let me see, what's a good thing? You might want to find out what's like, do you know that programmers tend to be hesitant to getting feedback on their code? If you want to find out like what programmers think about the code and about other people giving feedback, you can do that in a qualitative way. You can do it with a survey. You could do that with the interview. You could do it many ways. And particularly your particular philosophy of life is going to, and even maybe your current research background is going to depend which one you do. and both of them could both come up with good answers. So that is going to affect it. So when you get to know, figured out your research design, which I went through before. So what we didn't do a while ago, we didn't talk about whether it was qualitative or quantitative, because in this class, we've been focusing on quantitative. And by the way, qualitative is more and more accepted across the world. So historically, even in the natural sciences and computing, qualitative was frowned upon. More and more qualitative is embraced, not only in the social sciences, even in computing. Well, I was for myself. So now here. So this is all about quantitative only. So we're on the screen, we're only talking about quantitative, right? So within quantitative, for sure, probability better than non-probability. Yes? So now here we are. Let's say whether we have a mixed method or we have quantitative only, because whatever, we had a particular thing where we decided we were doing a longitudinal study where we're, doing some kind of intervention and we're taking data and we want to decide how we're doing our probability sampling. Now, there's a number of reasons that you're going to choose your sampling technique. Remember, one thing is very important is feasibility. Now, if you do not, if nobody in the world has a list of the population, you can never do a probability sampling. So unless you're going to find the money to get a list of those people. So if I wanted the programmers in Jamaica, there's no list. Because even though there's a society of Jamaica, whatever name, rename Jamaica Community Society, it don't have a list of every programmer. So unless you're going to first do something to get a list, like go out and try and recruit a list of all programmers, you're going to have to do a non-probability sampling of that. Whereas if your sampling was university students in Jamaica, there's a list of them. All universities have them. So if it is that you're the university students, probability sampling is possible. If you're doing a Jamaican population, the voter list is very close to the list of the population. So I hearing you, but how much money you have and whether the population is actually listed somewhere is important to whether you can do probability or non-probability sampling. But I see you're asking me sophisticated questions. Are you happy with my answer?
Yes, Miss Mary, very happy. Thank you.
Okay, great. Who's it? Is still Ralph?
Yes, Miss.
Ralph, I think you should go and do your master's, but you look like you're ready for next year. I'll give you a recommendation. People like you either should go into industry immediately and share with your brilliance, but you so like the researcher type. And I had a guy like you asking questions 1 year ago or 2 years ago, and he barely passed the class. I hope you're not that type. Then he came to me to ask me why. I move this along. I hope you're on the other side of it. I'm being serious, Ralph. I never understand why the students who ask the hardest questions either are getting A's or literally almost failing the class because they can't bother. It's neither here nor there. Moving on. Right, so among the probability sampling techniques, you have all these different types. And essentially, this is where you get to choose. It don't really matter so much which of these you choose. It just needs the one that makes the most sense, given your project. And remember, money is going to be a key thing. So stratified may make more sense if you have subgroups that you actually want to test. So guys, I'm going to spend the time here. Y'all can read, so you can read what each of these things mean. The hardest part of this is just to know what a stratified sample is. It means that within a sample, remember sample is a subset of the population, you're going to allocate among 2 or more subgroups. So like if we're thinking about the auxiliary staff, we might want to look at the males and females auxiliary staff. Or if you're looking at students, you really want to look at the full-time and part-time students. Yes, or back to the students, we could look at the ones who are in their, like up to 30 to 45, 46 and over, whatever, something, by generation X, Y, Z. Yeah, moving on. So on clusters just means groups. So you can read this, and then again, I'm not going to go through this because you can read this. And these all depend on what makes more sense. And by the way, some of them make sense. So if you have a project where you have people who know what is going on, know what are going on, that is the purposive sampling. Convenience sampling is none of these others make sense, really. So snowball sampling is nobody want to answer the question, so or you can't find the people, so you say, hey, you know anybody else? And they find somebody else. Purposive sampling is some people know more than others. You make those people answer the question. Quota sampling is, well, you even have an idea of how the list is, but it's a little bit too difficult to actually do it using stratified sampling, no matter why you think about it. And so you might actually want to do it in proportion to the population. So like at UTech, maybe engineering have 80% is males, and so you quota sample, you're going to maybe get 50 engineers in your engineering students, and you say you want so 40 engineering males and 10 females, because it will be difficult to do it by convenience, but you could, because there's actually a technique to get it. You have to go through there's a whole complicated method, but you want the thing right away and you got permission, you just quota something. And then convenience is only when this and this don't make no sense. Convenience sampling is not the best option to be. That is the what's left can't do any better. You really should have an argument why you're not doing even one of these, why you're doing convenience. But anyway, that's just me, and that's what the rest of this is. And then you should know, so there are some basic rules of thumbs. As I was saying earlier, qualitative studies actually are important, but they take a lot of time. Surveys generally are minimum of 100. Experiments is usually 15 per group, which basically means there's at least 30 in an experiment, because it's at least 2 groups, right? You could have 2 experimental groups and 2 control groups, that would be 60. And for correlation and causal comparative, a minimum of 30. And then there's a whole lot to know about sampling errors, and this is a bit complicated. So remember I said earlier about if you design the project in a bad way, you're going to lead to invalid results. I mean, the research is just wrong. If you have the sampling the bad, which is one of the flaws of methods, it can just lead to really bad results. So if what you want to know is about, I don't know, you want to know about Jamaica University students, and you only sample NTU students, that NTU students are not all accepting UTech. I've seen students like want to know about UTech students and only sample SCIS students. They need to change your project title, something. But you have to figure out what is that you're sampling, and you need to make sure that you design it so you measure what you say you're measuring. So sampling error, this kind of error is like the project is failed before it starts. The second one now is all project, no matter what, no matter how brilliant you are, it will have random sampling error because you're not doing a census and you're only, not you. Anybody is doing a subset of the thing, there's going to be some amount of error. And the larger the sample size, the smaller the random sampling error. And then there's a whole statistics about it. And what I like about this particular paper is that for a survey, the sample size, we don't need to ever go beyond 400 because it will have no longer effect on the sampling error. So at least you know that you never need to have a survey beyond 400 usually. Which I find interesting because, like, for example, like even the studies that we do in Jamaica, you know, like to find out about the, what do you call it again? Voters thing. It's usually like over 1,000 and it still has errors. Because at the end of it, no matter how well these people are, people doing it for decades now. There's no way to do a survey that is cross-sectional and get it perfectly right. Because there's going to be some amount of non-random sampling error. You're going to have some random sampling error is going to be there. Yeah. So yeah, what else is this? And so you should know what types of data. And we mentioned earlier about experimental, correlational, causal, comparative survey. We don't need to worry about single subject. That tends to be done in medicine We don't have to do it in computing. And there are a whole lot of types of qualitative research we have not really focused on much in this class. And you should know these terms, you know. Don't be shocked if they come on the test. It won't be, because it's things that you're supposed to know. And if you happen to be the animation student in the class who didn't do any statistics, it won't kill you to just look through these things. It won't be asking you anything super difficult, but it could come. Let me see, next thing that I want to do, got time running out. We did that. I could probably do the qualitative. Is there another one? Okay. Isn't there? What's this? Let's see, what is this? I think this is. This is just no, I need to do this right now. As a side note, not that it's going to be tested on this particularly, when you're thinking of your research questions, thinking through for major project going forward, you want to make sure back to, that's why I said the project must be feasible, interesting. It all must be interesting enough. But if it's not interesting, it's going to be a pain in the everything to finish a project. It's good if the project is novel, it must be ethical, and it's very useful to be relevant. At the end of it, if the panel in your major project doesn't think that your project is novel, you could have some big difficulties. So for you, you want it to be feasible and interesting. For you to get an A, you want it to be novel and relevant. In fact, for you, you want it to be relevant as well. I don't think any student here wants to do irrelevant projects. And no matter what, whether you feel like it should be ethical, the project should be ethical. Yeah, so I think that. Is there something on ethics I could go to the qualitative? I'm thinking, where is the? Is there another sampling project? We spent so many weeks on literature, introduction research design. So week 5 was what?
Excuse me, Sam.
Yeah?
How much question should we expect?
I have not looked at the. I have not looked at the. Oh, this is. We looked at this already. Looked at just now, week 5, week 6. Something. Let's see. I guess we can look at this now. I said, oh, it is 3 o'clock. Anyway, I said 2 hours. I know we're like I said 1.5 hours. Should I open this for 1 second? See if it opens. Let's just open this for 1 second and look at it. The reason why this won't open?
Excuse me, Miss.
Yeah.
Miss Mir. What structure is this testimony?
I guess you came very late.
Repeat that?
I said you came late.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, as I said earlier, and I've said many times, I don't know why this thing will open. Just doesn't want to open today. All right, I guess I'll open it from my. The test is an objective test with multiple choice questions that covers the syllabus. And as I said earlier, you're not going to be asked to write anything. So it's not going to be testing the components of the syllabus that the assignments tested like, writing a literature review, like, doing the statistics assignments, but all other parts of the syllabus can be tested. It's just a multiple choice that is only assigned for 1 hour. So whatever a 1 hour assignment, 1 hour test can cover, that's it. And it will start at 5 o'clock, and you come into the same space. Try to open up this thing. I'm going to take a few more seconds. Come back into the same Zoom room to get instructions. You can certainly come 10 minutes early, just to make sure that everything is fine. I'm going to do one more thing. I'm going to take a break. But let me see, where is this in complete research methods? I don't know why this thing doesn't know. Is there anything in the qualitative work going over for 2 seconds? So I'm just trying to find it on. All right, just a minute. This is not opening. Actually, I'll have it on the hard drive too. Opening this. All right, so let me share it this way. Share a screen. And this will be the last thing. Yeah, so the thing about the just as a general bridge, a lot of you will only do quantitative only project, but a lot of you will do mixed methods where you will spend a little bit of time doing adding an interview. Just to remind everybody, a lot of students enter into major project or leave other projects thinking that all projects have surveys. A survey doesn't have to be involved in any research project. There are lots of research projects in the world that have no surveys at all, whether of people or animals. So surveys is only one type of research. That's not the only type of research. We only just do like a quick introduction to a few research types in this class, but anyone that you did for your particular project, you can look at what is common in that area. So if you're looking at one particular area of computer science or one particular area of information systems, the particular approach could be completely different. Any specific thing that we do in the class is specific. It may not be a survey or like a test. It may be something else, because there are many kinds of ways in which you collect data to answer your research question. So we have not looked at every single type of data. We just told you, which is true, that every data is either qualitative or quantitative. So basically, when you're looking at qualitative research projects, it tends to be where you don't know much about the thing based on what is in the academic literature. And so you're trying to, that's why it's saying here, you're trying to get useful information to learn about things, maybe to give voice to silence people. And there's many ways you can approach that data collection, which you can read at your own time. Usually it's very small amount of people to get in-depth perspective. And you're doing it generally until you get a pattern. So it's usually up to 30, but if the pattern comes before that, it can be less than that, especially that's the whole part of the project. You always need to get ethical approval. You also need approval from the people who are, if it's at a place, at a location as well. There's some whole heap of differences in the permission. You can read at your own. You have to, qualitative projects, the gatekeeper, which could be anything from a done to a manager, is much more important in a qualitative project than in a quantitative project. These are the kinds of information you collect in a qualitative project. You either do observations or you do interviews. There are 2 types of interviews, focus groups and one-on-one. And most of it is not hard to understand. It's just basically time consuming. You can do it structured, semi-structured, or unstructured interviews. You can look at documents as part of a qualitative project. And the documents here, we don't mean the documents in a scholarly article. Like with documents in an organization that you're doing research on. There could be audiovisual materials that is in the organization that you're doing the research on. And all of these, you must follow basic rules that you're being respectful and all of that. So there are rules for interviews, there are rules for observations, there are rules for wherever you are in the field, so that you're going to be appropriate and professional in how you do it. And so there are a whole long list of ethical issues that are tends to be more complex. There are lots of ethical issues for quantitative too, but the ethical issues are, in a sense, more sophisticated in a qualitative project. And I just went through this all to say that for those who don't know, becoming an excellent qualitative researcher is a non-trivial thing, and it's worth thinking of. Yes. Anyway, that is it for my review. Sorry I didn't tape the first 15 minutes. Ralph, any other question?
No, Miss Mary, I don't have any more.
Was
Thanks for
it
answering.
helpful?
Yes, it was. Yes, it was.
So when you're starting your master's, Ralph? Or you're not paying me any money?
This, I'm not sure, Miss. I'm not sure.
Are you a computer science major?
Yes, I am.
Okay, no problem. Everybody have a good evening. Anybody else has a question?
Our question is,
Yes, Kurt?
yeah, like doing a research for where you're trying to ascertain information in regards to aggressive dogs, behaviors to which owners, like bad owners, dog owners, practice, like to tie in, compare different dogs that are not tied, are confined to a small area, as opposed to dogs that are tied, trained, and confined to a very small area. If whether or not it will cause them to become more aggressive and dangerous. Would it be done? You have you're monitoring both behaviors of dogs for a period of time.
It's Kurt, before we go any further, I know it's not convenient, it doesn't matter. The first challenge with how you're expressing it, not, if I want to be like myself, where I'm going to be, I want to call it a research study, is the first thing is you haven't defined your variables really carefully, because are you studying the owners or the dogs or both? Because you're going to have a problem studying both. So first, what is your what is the
dogs? The dogs.
Oh yeah, because you need to decide what is the focus. So you want to know about, you basically want to have dogs that are well behaved. Is that what you're basically wanting?
Yes.
So you want to know what are the variables that impact,
that contribute to the dog being aggressive.
Okay, so here's where you do a number of things. You see if anybody has written anything, back to being academic here. So you see if anybody has written anything about this. So I don't know. So if nobody has written anything about this, I go qualitative. I'm going as what I just said. So I probably would, if nobody had ever written anything about this ever, which I don't, because even in dog magazines, I'm sure somebody has written these somewhere there. And I suspect, I don't know though, maybe they're written some, but we're out. So first, I look to see what people have written about this. But they must even in dog magazine write something about this. Because this must be something that people are concerned about. Look at the bulldogs killing people. So because people are writing, I first look to see what people have written about this. I'm not joking as a researcher. After I do that, I now say, okay, I get a frame of what people think they know about it. Yes? And so I have a long list of variables that people believe contribute to, like I brainstorm, and people have also written about what they say contribute. And then you have to decide now if you're actually going to do I don't know, whether it's going to be a qualitative or a quantitative study or both. You have to decide what are you going to measure. Because if you're going to measure the things, you remember now, all studies have to be feasible. So if you're thinking about a quantitative study, it's going to be difficult to measure everything, but you have to decide what you're going to measure. So let's just go to the one you want to measure. Like what is, how often does the dog bite other people, or how are you going to measure the bad dog behavior and this behavior? That's my first question. Like for example, the owner is there and I come there. Is it that the dog is a bad dog if he bites me even when the owner says down dog down? Kurt?
Yes, you hear me now?
No, I wasn't hearing you. Yeah.
Okay. like the dog behavior, when you're there, if he's trying to make attempt to,
No, no, when you're there, it must be when the owner is there. Say
yeah,
correct. So
when owner
when
is
you're
there.
sorry, remember now, when you're talking as a researcher, you actually always have to be using your language very carefully. So if what you mean is when a dog's owner is present, you need to speak carefully like that. This is everybody here, you know. So that's what you mean?
Yes.
One
yes,
thing,
yes.
one thing I say about this project is the project is going to be difficult because are you willing to have a situation where you're going to do an experiment to see how many people get bitten by dogs that are not well controlled?
Well,
So
well,
I'm
well,
trying
it
to
doesn't-
understand how is this research going to work?
well, not necessarily the person that's not necessarily being bitten, but I mean,
What? I'm still trying to understand. Let's go to what is, I don't even understand how
what
you
I'm
going to
saying
measure.
aggressive. When I'm saying aggressive, like all right, you have some dogs that say some if the dog owner is there and
Mhm.
person comes around, the dog doesn't make any attempt, none at all, to attempt to bite or to attack any persons who's around. Whilst you have some dogs now, even when the dog is on leash and the owner has the dog on leash.
Right. So Kurt, that's going back to the point is it, you know, let me share my screen for a second. Let me help you out for a second here. I don't know if I want to spend too much time about this, but let's just do it. If you guys have some interest, you can stay. Here, let's this okay, let's enable editing. This is not what I wanted, but it's fine. Let's open a new file. So here, this is what you're doing. So your project is I don't know. Factors, let me make it bigger. Your project is factors that lead to aggressive was it aggressive behavior in dogs?
Yes.
Dog. Pet dogs. I don't know, I think it's dogs who are owned by people. So the thing is, the dependent variable, that's what I'm already trying to get at, is aggressive behavior towards visitor in presence of owner. I'm just trying to get exactly what is the variable, and then is this just a yes, no?
Yes.
I'm just trying to get what is the and then what are all the independent variables? Independent variables would be a long list. So that would be things like training. I think hours might be, you know, I don't know. It could be hours and quality because I don't know if it's just hours of dog training. What are the other things? I don't know. I have zero idea.
Socialization, having the dog socialize with other dogs. And
how you measure that? Everything over that I want to measure. I don't know what that means. How you gonna measure socialization? Everything I go right now, I need to know how to measure it.
Like you said, training
listen to me carefully, guys. If this was a qualitative research, you still would need to have every single thing, including the qualitative thing, measurable. So if you were just listen to people talk about it, at the end of it, you need to what they call, they look for themes in the data when people talk about what they know. Let's say you had a whole bunch of dog experts. You would have to listen to all the data when you interview lots of people in order to look for trends in the thing. But if you're going to do it with quantitative stuff, if you're going to say what you call it just now, socialization, I want to know what I'm measuring. Socialization, I didn't spell that right. If you're going to talk about socialization of dogs, what is that and how we're measuring it?
Based on my understanding, it's the period in which from birth of the dog, the dog spend around human beings.
Oh, I see. And but how are we going to measure that? So this is okay. So this sound like prospective study. Sorry, you know why I said this is a prospective study? If you don't have that data already, sorry, if you don't have this data stored,
Yes.
what you're going to do? Estimate this? Is it?
Yeah,
and if you're going to,
estimate.
yeah, but it's going to be a
estimation.
problem. That estimate going to be a problem. So it is an estimate or actual. And once you have too many estimates, you will have a problem.
Okay.
You know, back to if all of these, yeah, what else you going to have here? But my whole point is this kind of a study only going to have use, and this is only going to be good if either first you start off by seeing if there's literature on this area, or you getting me? I would not start here.
I've already the thing about Nasam, I already researched something on it, and what the literatures are saying that dogs who have a tendency that there's no, irrespective of the breed dog, none of them were born with inheritance to be aggressive, and it's really
really?
the owner, and the fact that they chain the dog and have the dog in confined space for a long period of time. The dog is not exposed to person around them. They become territory, not naturally a territory. So is one of the reasons that contribute for the dog being aggressive. So I was thinking now as to how the researcher would have used to measure.
But I just give you some. But the problem is I don't even know. So I'm just giving you. So if it's quantitative, I just said it measure some things. So I'm actually thinking of a prospective study, and this could either be a continuum or a Boolean value. You know, it could be like, you know, this could be three things. It could be like you bite the person, or just you, whatever. This could be a scale, or it could be yes, no. I don't know. So it could be a scale that, you know, somebody comes up with. You know, it could be aggressive behavior scale. You know, I don't know. It's either be a scale or a Boolean value. I don't know. And then you have these other things. But the point is to do this and do this well. And in fact, my question is this study even worth doing? It sounds to me, based on what you're saying, it sounds to me, based on what you're saying, that maybe the confinement and the socialization may be the two biggest things. But the only way you know is to study it. And I don't know, and you could do a study.
Yes, whilst I said it, you asked if it's worth doing it. Whilst I my personal belief that it is, because it can help influence lawmakers to prohibit owners from doing such. So owning certain dogs, and also ensuring that
could be practical, you know, like, so you could practical to inform policy, but you can't prohibit people from that. If you have a policy, hold on. If you have a policy, how are you going to stop me from owning a dog? Let's say I'm a horrible person. How the policy going to stop me from holding a dog?
Well, there's some country that ban certain breed of dog.
Yeah, that's different. But that's different than if I'm a person who holds dogs in confinement and doesn't socialize. I don't know. I'm not saying you can't, because I like the idea of it informing policy. I'm just saying the way you're saying it's a little bit complicated. But yes, you can do all kind of studies, but it needs to be well designed. And like every other study in the world, it needs to be based on, you sit down, think about, is this study worth it? Is a quantitative study better? Is a qualitative study? Is a mixed method study better? Why are we doing this study? Is it worthwhile?
Well, the purpose of doing the study is to prevent deaths by animals, by dogs. Like Jamaica, we have I think for last year, a couple of years.
No man, I think a better way to put it, you sound like most students. Studies are not going to prevent deaths. A study could inform a policy that is likely to reduce injuries to human beings. I know you want to be very grand and say policy go create that, and yeah, that's ambitious first, nothing wrong with that ambition. But
Yeah.
when you talk like a government official, when you speak, I'm not a government official, I mean for government official, not the fool who want to value, most of them will have right now. That you, if sorry, I'm being serious now. You know, like you know which Caribbean politician is so admirable? What's her name? The Bajan prime minister. When you talk like her, and she sounds educated. That's what I'm talking about. When you
Okay.
talk like her, I've heard any of her speeches recently. Amazing. I wish I could speak as good as her. She's impressive to the hilt. I'm just saying, if you want to speak informed as an educator, as a researcher, as a politician speaking based on empirical data, guys, you want to then make the policy that if the policy is based on empirical data. And so, yes, there's a chance that you may reduce deaths by animal, but yes, what is very likely is you could put together a policy that will reduce the amount of injuries by dogs. You know why? How many people get killed by dogs? Very few. That's why Mr. Dixon, I would sort of not say the way you said it. I would say to reduce the level of injuries. But you know, injuries includes deaths.
Yeah, I agree what you said, agree.
Anyway, I think I've answered that question, at least in part. Way outside the ballpark of this class, because we normally stick into computing. I can't believe 23 people have stayed. Apparently, they like the topic. Any other question, guys? You guys like that? You guys like apparently you like the conversation about the dogs. Ralph, you like that? You like that one?
It was very informative, miss.
Did you like my approach?
Yes, miss. Yes, miss, I did.
Yeah, man. But the point is, no, I wasn't given a complete list, because the point is, if you want to think through all the variables, you actually have to know all the variables, and that is why I would say I would want to go to the dog owner expert to find out, whoever they are, to find out what are the things that they believe contribute. Because I'm not an expert, anyway. I see Kurt knew some of the variables, you know, because at the end of it, if you missed measuring an important variable, you do the study and you miss something that's really key. That is why, if there were no quantitative studies yet, you need to make sure you either read in dog magazines and wherever those people write about, and go and interview experts in the field to make sure all the variables that are really important is part of the study that you're going to do.
But miss, even what you said, even what you just said, I realized that the hardest part in research is finding how you're going to measure the variables, just like what you were saying to Kurt.
Yeah.
It doesn't, when you're reading it, it seems simple, but in practicality, it's not as simple.
Right, that's what I said. I said, exactly how? Look at those questions. It's like, oh yeah, you're just going to measure it. I'm like, but measure it how? How exactly going to measure that the dog is aggressive? Like, it could be bullion on off, or it could be, let's make it really simple, the dog does nothing towards me. You know, when the dog kind of like jump at the gate, and then the other ones where they're jumping over the gate. Like, two times a dog through the gate, it was like bit me a little bit. You know, like it didn't really bit me to hurt me. And one of them was right next door to where I lived. I actually literally shouted at the dog after I got my hair out of the way. I was hear me to the dog, like, what's wrong with you? Because I live there. Me, I don't live at that house, you know. But I lived there for years, and this dog have this audacity, from my point of view, to be trying to bite me. Sorry, obviously I'm not afraid of dogs. But the point is, I was like, I made note. I didn't go near that gate again, because I was like, well, you know, maybe the dog was going to bite me one day. So I was like, you know, let's just stay far from that gate. But yeah, man. But the point is, all research projects, including marketing research, can be approached, but it needs to be done in a very thoughtful manner. Otherwise, you have a validity and reliability problem. So validity is that you need to get results that works. And if you don't set it up, that's why many research projects needs to be repeated, because even when you do it once, you really don't know if that one study, that's why one study don't prove nothing. It only suggests. Even when you have really high statistical thing that you get at 99%, you say that the study strongly suggests. Anyway, I know Daniel will remember what that's not Daniel. I know Ralph will remember a whole couple of people. Thorn, Stefan, you remember what I said? That a study does not prove, it only suggests. Yeah, I think a couple of people here in my class had asked me to, was it Easton? Easton, were you in the group that sent me an email? Easton?
Present.
Was it your group that was looking for feedback, or that or you're not that group? It was another group.
Possibly one of the groups.
What was your topic again?
My topic was basically AI in secondary education.
Oh no, it wasn't that group. It was that group. Yes, it was the group with that it was Friday. It was a Friday morning, and I was suggesting that I gave you some written feedback. That was your group.
Not written, but after we presented, yes, you gave us some feedback.
Oh, I gave you some feedback. I don't know. I know it was two groups, and one group I think I said I was going to give them some additional feedback. Oh, and then that one person didn't show up. Maybe that person isn't here. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure. And then somebody sent me an email, then I was trying to find the email, I couldn't find it. Anyway, there's nobody here with a pressing question for me, whether in my class or otherwise.
Would the topics that we're doing now be able to be continued into major projects if it's greenlit by you and the ethics committee?
Yes, from the first week, a topic can be continued. The biggest reason why they would not be continuable is feasibility, not getting a supervisor, and the biggest one, which is, let's say your group have what? Your group have what, 5 people?
Just me and Miss Ferguson.
Okay, all right. So your group have 2 of you. Let's just take it as let's say only you want to go forward. All it would basically mean is if Miss Ferguson didn't want to go forward and the project was worth pursuing, it would just mean that the parts that she wrote would need to be rewritten by other group members going forward, because if you take somebody else's stuff and put in your project, that's called plagiarism, like literally. So I'm saying it's only three things you need. You just need a project that is worth doing. You need to have between 3 to 5 group members, and you need a supervisor.
3 to 5. Okay, all right. Okay.
You follow me? And if it is that people in your group have dropped out, the part that was written before needs to be rewritten. When I say rewritten, remember in the literature review, for example, the literature review is supposed to be an analysis. So it's supposed to be, which is not what many of you have done. A lot of you have just simply done a paraphrase of what's in the literature. Meaning just tell us what the people said. Have not really analyzed to say, oh, these 5 papers are the better papers on this, and this particular paper was a poor job in this area in this way. But so the best papers would have done a analysis and a synthesis of the papers that they've read. But at any rate, if any part of it is a complete repeat, that's called plagiarism. And for that alone, you can actually fail a major project. So you understand me, Easter?
Yes, Ms. Mirror.
Yeah, man. So what's your topic again? But I know you said it's AI in education, but what was specifically you wanted to look at in AI and education?
It was an investigation into artificial intelligence on education in secondary education. No, I don't have it written out in front of me.
Right. The only thing, I don't remember all the details right now. The only thing I thought at the time, I still think, even though you got more and more narrow now, is I still think you need to narrow it a little bit more. But in general, projects like looking at utilizing any particular aspect of AI in higher education is certainly something that could be done for a major project. Probably what you actually need to do is narrow it. But yeah, certainly that we actually even have a research group in the school with several lecturers that that's the focus, I think computing and education, and maybe you could even have people who are in that group, one of them supervise you. So it's certainly a possibility. So not
narrowed
going to
it down.
discourage you.
We
What's
narrowed
that?
it down. We narrowed it down to integrated science.
Oh,
But
integrated science. Okay. Right.
yes,
So I'm just
but
saying, yeah, it is possible. So yeah, it is a possibility.
could you give me the name of at least one person